OK, I'm hoping we get that feedback. I do apologise. I don't think we're missing much, to be fair, in terms of these exchanges. They're rather sort of hard work, aren't they, these exchanges between the Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith and the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. We've just got one more question to go from the Conservatives. I don't know if we can get the feedback just for that final question, but it does appear to have gone. I do apologise for that. A bit of a problem with our tech here. That usually you get the big flourish at the end. I'm not sure we're going to necessarily get that from Andrew Griffith. I mean, there are a couple of... there's some very, very solid points being made there in terms of crucial issue we've just been talking about with the pub owner and Michelin-starred chef Tom Kerridge about the help for pubs, which frankly is too little too late. It's what everyone is saying. Quite a nice gag about what other businesses are Labour MPs can be banned from after pubs. Is it is it restaurants? Is it shops? Is it hair salons? Not making a big deal to Andrew Griffith, who's bald, and David Lammy, who's pretty bald as well. Also a nice little gag about Andy from Manchester having his dreams crushed. Little dig there about Andy Burnham being blocked from standing in the Gorton by-election. But other than that, I would say, Peter Cardwell joining me in the studio, pretty sort of... PMQs, wasn't it? We were hoping for a little bit more fun. I've got to be honest with you. I think if you can't, put the punches into David Lammy, you're not doing a very good job.
Yeah, I think the strategy that Kemi Badenoch has of rotating people doesn't really work, because even though it's an adversarial relationship, it hasn't been built. And if you had someone who's really good parliamentary performer, like Alex Burghardt, for example, not particularly well known, of course, but still someone who can land a punch on someone like David Lammy, that might have been a better idea. Andrew Griffith certainly knows his stuff on business. Yeah. He was a senior executive at Sky, for example, for many years. He knows business. He is a successful businessman, but nonetheless, it didn't quite land. It felt more like business questions to me than Prime Minister's questions. Yeah,
we were all sitting there, as I'm sure you were, especially when the feed went out, just sort of looking a bit at each other. What is that question? As usual, though, of course, Claire Pearce, the person answering the questions on behalf of the Prime Minister doesn't actually answer the questions. He certainly didn't know the answer to what was the cost. I thought it was a good specific question. What is the extra cost of hiring a 21-year-old as a result of the changes made by the Conservative Party? So the Labour Party is the Conservatives, and the cost is up £3,600 a year. That is a very stark figure, and that tells you why they're not hiring people.
Exactly, and that's the one question that should have really been landed with a massive punch, and it's the great question to ask. I just think the way it was asked didn't get the kind of response that we were looking for. It all felt a little bit flat.
I do worry sometimes when we discuss this, because I think we're all a little bit nerdy, the three of us, aren't we, when we discuss this? We do
won't have it said.
You definitely are. But, we like the political theatre, we like these exchanges. But I mean, it does matter for people in terms of their political careers. Doing well in Parliament will show, this person's a performer. They can do it. They can take the argument to the opposition. They can get a laugh. They can hold the audience's attention. That does matter. Although, of course, it doesn't necessarily translate into votes. I mean, William Hague being the prime example.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that we expect our politicians to be absolutely everything. We want them to be entertaining. We want them to be down to earth. We want them to have experience in all kind of businesses. It just doesn't happen. What you do need is that connection. You need to be able to stand up and make people believe in what you say. And there are only a very few people in that place that can do it, and the majority of the new MPs stand there in the House of Commons reading from their mobile phone.
When I used to be in the lobby when I was a political journalist, and I said you weren't allowed to do, you'd be told off for reading.
Absolutely.
People would be shouting, reading. Yes. I'm not entirely sure why necessarily a memory test is the most vital thing. I have notes in front of me when I'm interviewing a cabinet minister or a former prime minister.
But you don't sit there and look down at them and read off them. And if you're in the House of Commons, this is your moment. You should know the subject that you're speaking on. You've applied to speak in a debate, therefore you have an interest.
I mean, a lot of it is just not very good performance. Again, but communicating with this is about communicating with the public. This is the clip, if the Prime Minister's not away, which goes on the 6 o'clock news, and that's often the only news a lot of people see. So it does matter. I mean, there wasn't... I thought that £3,600 a year line was good, the Andy from Manchester line good, but there's not really a punch laid on. I mean, of all people, David, I mean, frankly, that that French cab driver was at more risk from David Lammy or his wife than he was from Andrew Griffith.
Yeah, I think this was a very low-key PMQs. There weren't many blows really traded either from David Lammy either. I mean, he talked about Andrew Griffith not supporting the minimum wage. I mean, that was a very long time ago. Talked about
Tories generally didn't. They were opposed.
Yeah, exactly. His record as a net zero champion, and talking about Liz Truss's budget being a good thing. So there were a few blows there, but really it didn't get moving.
No one knows. With all due respect, I like the man. No one knows who Andrew Griffith is, and no one cares. No, but let's have a reality. Most people need to, reality check politicians. Most people couldn't name more than 2 members of the cabinet, let alone a shadow cabinet minister.
And that's why it's kind of a risky strategy for Kemi Badenoch to say, when it's Deputy Prime Minister's questions, for her not to do it, that's the convention, but is there someone who's a really good performer who did very, very well at this, for example?
And she never
used Robert Jenrick, not once, in this, for example, which for reasons you can understand.
Exactly. Now, Kemi Badenoch was speaking this morning, while we were interviewing Liz Truss on the show, and it's interesting, she's coming out fighting. She's certainly more energetic than she used to be. She finally came on the show here last week. I mean, she has been out and about. I think she's realised she needs to kind of upgrade in the last couple of months her energy levels and her being out there levels, because you're up against someone like Nigel Farage who can just, press conference after press conference.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere all day. The man has energy levels. I mean, he's early 60s now. His energy levels are greater than the average, frankly, 6-year-old kid running around.
Certainly, yeah.
And she's facing that. But where are you in terms of where we are in terms of the Gorton by-election? Because we've got one official candidate so far, that is Matthew Goodwin for the Reform UK Party. Really interesting choice there of a seat. I think we're going to have an interesting battle when it looks like the Muslim Vote organisation called Muslim Vote, set up in 2023, say they're going to back the Green candidate, whoever that is, because they've got 28% of Muslim population in that constituency in Manchester, and basically saying they're going to call on Muslims in that constituency to vote for the Green candidate. Certainly, when you talk about what Matthew Goodwin has said as an academic and as a pollster, and his writings, and he's got a brilliant Substack, and he's on a lot of media. Basically, he's saying we have an Islamist threat here, specific, different from Muslims, but we are going to be talking about a bit of a clash on some key issues in that.
Very big clash. I think this is going to be a fascinating by-election. Whoever the Green candidate is, that's going to be an interesting one. I don't think it's going to be Zach Polanski. It may well be their deputy leader, actually, who's a Muslim and has some very questionable views. Yeah, very questionable views.
There's a female candidate that's possibly being considered as well.
Yeah, who's a local, I think, as well. Yeah. Also, does George Galloway stand? That's another very interesting point as well.
He's been ruled out. The Workers' Party, they put a candidate in last night. It was late last night.
Wait a minute, you don't keep up on what George Galloway's doing every second of the day.
I'm afraid the Workers' Party feed is not one I follow. But all right, Rula. But they see, I knew about Rula Lenska, I didn't know about the Workers' Party candidate. The true, and you call me a nerd.
I was going to say, none of the people exactly. But all these shenanigans going on about Andy Burnham, I'll stick with you on this, Peter, is, and again, the little dig there. I like that, like this poor young Andy Burnham from Manchester having his dreams crushed. This whole sort of battle of words of a sort of, clearly Robert Pestle, who's got very good, contacts in government, and particularly actually in the Treasury, as we know, from being, his job for so many years at the Bee during, financial crisis, basically saying, look, there's been this battle between Burnham and the Prime Minister and the NEC, and basically Andy Burnham was told in no uncertain terms by Number 10, you are not going to be allowed to stand in this by-election. Yeah. You're going to be blocked by the NEC. Can't risk having you, losing the mayoralty of Manchester. He says that's not true. I was not told this. The Prime Minister, actually, talking to the gaggle of journalists on the plane to China, has said that it's also backed up Andy Burnham. But these briefings, this battle between Andy Burnham and Number 10, does any of that matter?
No, I don't think so. It's a mess, clearly, politically. What it does show is the Prime Minister is not in control of the people who are briefing on his behalf, or alternatively is, and then denies it, which is worse.
I mean, both of those are very likely.
Yes, exactly. Maybe they're both true at the same time. So the interesting point, I think, on this is that Andy Burnham is neutralised for a little while, but he'll come back, or indeed Angela Rayner saying, I'm not dead yet. As she said last week, she may have £1 million of fundraising behind her, as well as she wants to stand when...
Well, could you get that out of the flat in... probably got a new mortgage against the flat in Brighton.
When/if she gets through this inquiry. So she's banking that she will. I think the more likely one is probably Wes Streeting against Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner probably wins if there's a contest. If it happens,
shapes.
you know, there's a lot happening. Andy Burnham will return to Parliament, I would imagine, at some stage. But this nonsense.
But how?
Well, maybe at the next election. But this nonsense.
But he has to be selected for a seat.
Yeah, well, it's true. But he could, in theory. It could
I mean, there is an
happen
argument. The argument is that you said you were going to serve 4 years, and it's the only argument that should have been given by the Prime Minister of the NEC, and it's a perfectly legitimate argument. You said categorically you would serve a 4-year term. You weren't just going to go, carpet bag to get yourself a.
Well, I love this nonsense as well as I want to support Keir Starmer. I mean, it's just such total nonsense. Also,
it's a lie.
Also, they would lose probably the mayoralty of Greater Manchester. So there's a lot of risk for Labour in all of this. I see where Keir Starmer's coming from, but the problem is he's acted in a weak way because he is weak.
Yeah, absolutely. Claire Pearsall?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo what you've just said there. He is incredibly weak. He's handled this so badly and has actually just given more power to Andy Burnham.
Made him the martyr.
Yeah, absolutely made him the martyr. But the one person that comes out of this better than anyone else is Wes Streeting. Because he answered questions on the whole thing by saying this is a matter, this is a party matter, it's not for a cabinet minister. I'm here to talk about the health service. He's dealt with this
also,
so
when
well.
he's been accused of being up to things, and he just, when he's gone on telly and he's just absolutely killed it. He's done really, with humour. But he's considered too much on the right, too soft for the party membership to vote for him.
But also he has to consider all of the rest of the people on the NEC, some of which are his mates, and the rest of the MPs who he will rely upon, who will then help with looking at the party membership. I mean, I don't think it's out of the water for him yet.
No.
The interesting thing I found about Wes Streeting is, despite running the health service, despite all the big things that he's got to deal with, he somehow found time to write every Labour MP a Christmas card.
Oh,
funny
that's
isn't
nice
it?
of him.
Just kind.
Doesn't take that
thoughtful.
much time, to be fair.
404 Christmas cards.
Gordon Brown always found time. Do you know what he used to do when he was Chancellor? He used to write personal letters to every single Labour MP who backbench you, and it took a long time, obviously, with that massive big majority, 179, back in Blair's day, the first election. He would write every single one when they used to do their maiden speeches, and often they'd be like at 11 o'clock at night when they'd finally be getting up and down. And Gordon Brown would write them a note the next day. Obviously, someone would tell them what had happened, and basically would say, I don't think it was televised at the time. The excellent point you made there, really good speech. Every single person got that personal.
Yeah, he also wrote to the people who got voted out of the X Factor. Do you remember that? He wrote them a personal letter. He would ring them.
Really? Do you know he also did? I was political editor when I had my daughter, and I've got a personal letter from the Chancellor and from his. I also got a blanket for her.
That's lovely.
We used it for the guinea pigs. She did use it for my daughter as well. Beautiful blanket. Still got it. Absolutely beautiful.
Brilliant.
I'm just, I don't think the political editors were all very different times. They were all men then, so it was quite unusual for one of us to have a baby. Of course, under Labour policy now, men can have babies, so that's fine. But there we are. Let me ask you just on more important things. Prime Minister's in China, getting a terrible deal, if anything at all, from the Chinese. Meanwhile, with that front page of the Telegraph, really damning. A lot of people getting on the phone lines about him being involved. Pro bono. So I'm sorry, you do get to choose the work you do for free. Totally. Along with Lord Hermer. That name keeps coming up. He's there. Anything going wrong, he's involved. His big mate, fellow human rights lawyer, now Attorney General, the guy who handed over the Chagos signs, you name it, he's involved in it. But he's basically was, involved in this massive court case for encouraging the MOD, Ministry of Defence, to reopen a whole load of cases where veterans, one guy, he'd been found innocent twice, case reopened. And we've seen what's happening with the bill involving the Troubles in Northern Ireland as well. And I know you talked lots about that, obviously, from Northern Ireland, you understand that so much better than I would. But, this is really damaging stuff. Talking about possibly sending troops to Ukraine.
Phil Shiner was involved. Phil Shiner,
absolutely
the disgraced solicitor, absolute ambulance chaser. This is highly embarrassing. This is something he chose to do, and this is a pursuing of these people who had been cleared on a couple of occasions.
It is a witch hunt. We're not talking about people who have been subsequently found to have committed war crimes. We're talking about people found innocent again and again.
And as you say, Hermer's name keeps coming up. It is my strongly held personal belief he is the most dangerous man in government.
Yeah, absolutely. he's going to have to go at some point. He really is. I don't see the backbenchers putting up with him much longer. But there we are. Great to have you in the studio, Peter Cardwell. Tell me what show you're doing today.
Not today, but I'm back on. I'm identifying as Julia Hartley-Brewer on Friday from 10
Oh,
until 1.
fantastic!
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, I'll choose your outfit for you.
Excellent.
That'll be fun. Peter, come on back then. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Claire, thanks for staying with me.